I'm Greg Hunter. Welcome to USAWatchdog.com. With us, a brand new guest. He has served as a consultant for presidents on medical issues. He's got great contacts. He is a former and newly retired orthopedic surgeon. He retired because he found Obamacare completely unworkable. He just got out of the profession, but he's still a growing force on the internet with DaveJanda.com and his popular radio show, and also the theme of his site, Operation Freedom. Dave Janda, thanks for joining us today on USAWatchdog.com.
Greg, it is an honor to be here. And the nurse I worked with for 20 years, she said, Dave, even though you've been on Oprah and you co-hosted a show with her and she featured your book and you've been on all this network TV and radio stuff, she goes, until you were on with Greg Hunter on USA Watchdog, in my book, you will have not made it until you do that. So, Greg, okay. God's honest truth, I want to thank you because at least in some folks' eyes now I have made it.
Well, as far as I'm concerned, you're a great guest. Great contacts. I want to start with some of your contacts. I mean, you have consulted for presidents on healthcare, and I want to start with. Actually, I want to start with the Lindsey Graham thing. And when I told you about this, you looked at me and went, he's got a new bill coming down, and maybe he can get John McCain to vote for it. I can't believe that Mitch McConnell couldn't count to 50 and didn't know that was going to fail. But anyway, what about, they're talking about doing away with individual employer mandates and that you could buy catastrophic policies. Is it better than what we have now? I mean, what's going on with what they're doing? Can it pass?
It has a possibility to pass. I think they're going to draw this out as long as they can, because the longer they draw it out, the more money they get from the insurance industry for their coffers. You see, unfortunately, Greg, this discussion of healthcare reform, whether it's Obamacare or whether it's what Lindsey Graham is speaking about, it's not about the availability of increasing the availability of care, the quality of care, the affordability of care. It's really all about control. You see, as long as any semblance of Obamacare remains, and in the Graham plan, a majority of Obamacare actually remains, it's fraught with failure. The hardest thing I ever did as a physician was to counsel a patient about them having cancer. It's a terrible conversation to have with an individual. And it's interesting that there are two reactions you get when you tell somebody that they have cancer. One is they look at you and they go, "You're wrong," and they don't even listen to you and go into denial and leave the office. And folks that go that route are more apt to end up in a box 6 months later. The folks that get the information, they're devastated, and then they look at you and they go, "Okay, I don't deserve this. What do we do to fix it?" And between the doc and the patient, you come up with a plan, a plan to beat cancer. Obamacare is cancer, period. And you can't tweak cancer. You have to cut it out. You have to destroy it. And any plan that does not completely get rid of Obamacare, the patient is going to die, period.
So the Lindsey Graham thing is not going to completely going to make it a little better, but not going to get rid of it.
It's not going to get rid of it. It makes it a trifle better. Look, if someone's serious when they start talking about, if you will, reducing the control of government and the control of the insurance companies when it comes to the decision-making process about care for each and every patient in our country. We need to empower people. We need to reestablish the doctor-patient relationship. We need to reestablish free market forces within medicine. Look, I practiced orthopedic surgery for 27 years. I was involved in healthcare delivery for 32 years because a residency in orthopedic surgery is 5 years. In 32 years of being involved in healthcare delivery on the front line, I never experienced, Greg, a free market healthcare delivery system. The insurance industry was involved from the very get-go at a high level, and it's only escalated. And here's one of the big fallacies people need to realize. Having health insurance does not mean you're going to get health care. Example, Medicaid. Medicaid is an insurance program run through the government for the poor and the indigent. Greg, there are four peer-reviewed published medical studies that show that people that have Medicaid insurance have poorer health outcomes and a higher chance of dying than people that have no insurance at all.
Oh, boy.
And the question is, well, wait a minute. If they have health insurance or government health insurance, why are they dying more frequently? Why do they have poor health outcomes? Because Medicaid is based on the most unethical and inhumane means of cutting costs, and that's the rationing and denying of care. Every system that has ever been built on rationing by government bureaucrats, rationing by insurance executives, I will show you a health insurance program that leads to unnecessary deaths and unnecessary, if you will, illness. Look at the British healthcare model, ration-based system. Problem. You know, Greg, when I finished my residency, I went to Canada to do a fellowship in shoulder reconstructive surgery and sports medicine. That's what I thought I was going up there to do. And I did. I studied with the best, if you will, shoulder and sports medicine guru, Richard Hawkins, at the University of Western Ontario. But I got another education, and that was in a national healthcare delivery system, of which Canada is involved and has been for decades. And I got a huge education in what small things can work in a national healthcare delivery system, reduce paperwork, if you will. But I also got an education in why it would never work effectively anywhere in the world. And the reason is because when you have government bureaucrats with no functional medical knowledge determining healthcare delivery, I will show you a population that is vulnerable to medical, if you will, medical disasters. And that's the problem. And frankly, we already have a national healthcare delivery system right here in our country, Greg. It's called the VA system. And what a goat rodeo that is. So why anyone would say, hey, look, we want to make everybody a part of the VA system, because that's essentially what Obamacare does. We want to make everybody a part of the VA system in this country. Why would you do that? Because it's all about control.
Wow.
And the same scum that push a government-run healthcare delivery system on a national scale are the same scum that manipulate the issue of climate change, that manipulate the issue of our financial markets. It's all about control. These people, it's the globalist, if you will, syndicate. And, you know, I live in the People's Republic of Ann Arbor, Michigan. You start speaking about the globalist syndicate and people look like you have a third eye. And you're a conspiracy theorist. No, you're just a truth teller.
I'm glad you have gone there, and because you're a lot more than just a doctor. I mean, you cover finance, you cover why some of the titles on your website, why the globalists want your cash, and the real axis of evil, and things like that. Now, I want to just talk to you about a real life peg that just happened at the Emmys, and I heard Tucker Carlson on the air. He was great. He wrote a great thing, and I had no criticism of him. I like him. And he said that, this is basically not just them, dogging out Trump and their liberals. This is them telling the country that they were stupid and they were dumb, and that how much they hated the fact that, middle America, the lower class, voted for Trump that's getting nothing in this country. And they're the upper class is basically out of touch. And, I gotta go one further. I think that really it's just a revolt against God. because the people that voted for Trump, you got people laying their hands on Donald Trump. If you send that picture, and him up. If you looked at the inauguration, that was so overtly, humble yourself in front of the Lord, He'll heal your lands. I mean, he had all kinds of preachers, rabbis. He had all kinds of men of God on. He mentioned God. I heard Jesus Christ mentioned. The name mentioned Jesus Christ more than once at the inauguration. I couldn't believe it. And so this is really a revolt against God. I mean, that's what we have. I mean, and I just want you to kind of fan this out when you talk about the globalists. I mean, here you have and we were talking about this in a pre-interview, the head of the religious journalism section of the Washington Post is revealed to be an occultist. She believes in Satan. And she worships Satan. I believe in Satan. I don't worship him. I think he's a weasel pretender, that serves nothing, because I worship Christ. But unbelievable. They believe in Satan. These people believe in Satan. Hillary Clinton, Ben Carson brought this up at one of the RNC convention, I think. That the hero of her hero is Satan. Saul Alinsky's her hero. He dedicated his book to Lucifer. At least he got a kingdom. Supposedly, according to Saul Alinsky. But I digress. Can we talk about the real axis of evil and the evil that's trying to control our healthcare, which is all interconnected? And go.
So I agree with you, Greg, but I also believe they despise anyone who thinks. Anyone that doesn't slurp their soup that they hand out every morning to us, whether it's through the lamestream fake media and TV or radio or the New York Times or the Washington Post, they despise anyone who thinks. Look, when I first identified problems in Obamacare, and first of all, Obamacare was two parts. The first part was hidden in the stimulus bill. That's where all the rationing boards and the enforcement boards were. Greg, when I came up with that determination, because I had worked in healthcare policy since I was brought to Washington by Ronald Reagan to work on healthcare policy back in 1988 with then Surgeon General C. Everett Koop and Jack Kemp. And so I had a background in healthcare policy, and I read the stimulus bill, and halfway through the stimulus bill was a ration-based system based on the British model that was really no different than Hillary Care. Well, Greg, when I came up with that determination, I brought it to many people in the lamestream fake media that I had a relationship with because they had featured my prevention research on, you name the network, around the country. They all looked at me and they go, Dave, I believe you, but and what you have written is black and white, and yeah, you even show us the page numbers and the sentences, but Dave, we can't talk about this.
That's unbelievable. Yes, that's what they do. They got to keep their jobs.
They got to keep their jobs. And so let me take you back in time. You mentioned back in 1988, I went to Washington to work in healthcare policy for Reagan. Worked with C. Everett Koop, Jack Kemp, some folks in the Domestic Policy Council. Reagan was very open-minded, and it led to me testifying in front of Congress in 1989. And I testified on the role of prevention and how it can be utilized to cut healthcare costs because it puts people in charge of their healthcare freedom as opposed to government or insurance companies. Well, I get done with my testimony and some guy walks up to me, and I would never do this now, never. And he says, Dr. Janda, Lee Atwater, the chairman of the Republican Party, was watching your testimony on C-SPAN. He was very impressed and he'd like to speak with you. Oh, okay. He goes, well, come with me and I'll drive you over. Now, okay. Naive Dave, back in 1989, gets in the car with this fella and we drive over to Republican National Headquarters and we go up to his office and he's sitting there and his boots are on his desk and he's playing the guitar and there's a TV above his head and C-SPAN's playing and he looks at me and goes, Dr. Janda, have a seat. So I sit down across the desk from him and he says, Dr. Janda, I enjoyed your testimony immensely. He goes, you really made excellent points, and you actually got all of the congressman's attention, and that's a hard thing to do. He goes, you're very good at communication. I go, oh, well, thank you very much. I hope that they'll implement some of the things I was speaking about. And he said, well, yeah, they might. But he goes, let me tell you something. Based on what I saw, and he goes, I've been in this business my whole life. He goes, I predict that you're going to be approached to run for Congress or the House, the Senate, maybe governor. He goes, hell, for all I know, maybe someday, President of the United States. But let me give you some advice, Dr. Janda. He goes, this is an evil town. It's an evil city. Direct quote, you are an albino in a sea of black. He goes, while you were testifying, I did a little research on you. I know you're married, and I know you have a little daughter, red-haired little daughter. I thought that was a little creepy that he would know that, but okay. And he said, so here's the bottom line. If you decide to run for office, you're going to have a problem. You see, if you want your wife not to be a widow, and you want your 1-year-old daughter to know who her daddy is, you'll never run for office. Because if you do, they will kill you. And I don't mean that figuratively. I mean that literally. I looked at him and I said, so are you threatening me, or are you just giving me friendly advice? He goes, no, I really like you. He goes, I like you a lot. And he goes, I think it's important for you to continue your work in medicine and continue your work in prevention and continue to work in healthcare policy. I'm just giving you friendly advice. I'm just giving you friendly advice. You're an honest guy. You can't be bought. You can't be paid off. And because of that, they will kill you.
Leanne, you died of brain cancer.
Yeah, he did. And I stayed in touch with him for about 6 or 9 months after that. And it was very soon after that he was given a speech and he had a seizure. Yeah. He was diagnosed with brain cancer and died. But, Greg, there are certain conversations we have in our lifetime that we keep going back to. And that's a conversation I think about every day.
Wow.
And the reason is, and let me give you another little tidbit here. When I was doing healthcare policy for Reagan, and this is back in '88, so this is a year before that conversation with Atwater occurred, there's a very high-level political figure who was at a meeting I was at, and it was on healthcare policy and domestic issues. And the meeting broke up, and we were walking down Pennsylvania Avenue. And he said, Dave, you're a really honest guy, and you're new to this. He goes, I want to give you some advice. He said, everybody in this city is under control. They're co-opted. And the single best piece of advice I can give you, Dave, is no matter who invites you, never go to a private party. If you're invited to a party at the White House, fine. But anywhere else, I don't care who it is, never go.
Why?
Because you can go out to dinner with in public with any guy or woman you want, but never go to a private party, because it's at those private parties, Dave, that an innocent event can turn into something that leads to the undermining of your credibility. And, it's interesting because when I spoke about this, I recently, and I just actually posted an interview with a former Navy SEAL, SEAL Team 6 member, Craig Sawyer. And he has dedicated his efforts, and he has recruited for me Rangers, Delta Force, SEAL team members to go after this human trafficking pedophile issue. And he actually identified this as something called brownstoning, that in DC, you're invited to a party, your drink is either Mickey'd, and as your drink is Mickey'd, next thing you do is you wake up and there's a Polaroid picture on your chest of you passed out with a kid next to you.
Yeah.
And I'm telling you, Craig, what Craig said, I can tell you, Craig, that I have heard this from countless people in Washington. And as I worked in
Wow.
healthcare policy under Reagan, and then had an appointment under Bush to the National Center for Injury Prevention and Control, and then did a little bit of, and not that any of these, Reagan listened to what we had to say about free market reforms. We used to call them medical IRAs back then, health savings accounts, direct primary care, selling insurance across straight lines, prevention and wellness initiatives, price transparency. This is all stuff we were talking about in 1988, which is why.
And none of the stuff they're doing today.
No, because the insurance companies don't want that.
Yeah.
Insurance companies want control.
Yeah.
And to those people that look at Obamacare and say, well, the insurance companies hated Obamacare. Really? You look at their stock prices. They're up 600%, each one of them, from when Obamacare went into effect.
Yeah,
Obamacare was essentially written by the insurance industry. But I digress a bit. But the point here, Greg, is that
they want control of you through healthcare, and they control our politicians through all kinds of control files, a lot of which are pedophilia.
Correct. And many people can't get their head around this. They think it's conspiracy theory. They think it's paranoia. I can tell you, this fellow, Craig Sawyer, you can go to davejanda.com. I have it. It's the video interview feature right on the front page. I just put it up this morning. He has a website also, vets4childrescue.org. Incredible information. But Greg, while I was working on healthcare policy, I ended up meeting people in the intelligence agencies, the Pentagon, the DEA, Secret Service, FBI. Greg, I've asked many people, and there are so many good people in government behind the scenes that are fighting for every one of our freedoms and liberties. But there's also a bunch of folks that tend to be out in the public eye that, I asked these folks behind the curtain. I said, what percentage of these folks that are elected representatives in the House and the Senate federally, what percentage of them have control files that are just doing the bidding of the globalists who essentially own the show? Greg, the standard answer I get is 99%.
Yeah, Catherine Austin Fitz brought the same thing up, control files. That they have control files. That's why I would never make it. I was a Boy Scout at the, I don't mean to sound, I was a whoosh. I mean, I was,
Greg, that's what Lee Atwater was telling me back in 1989.
Yeah.
You're a Boy Scout, Dave. Dave, you can't be bought. And if you can't be bought, Dave, you'll never make it in this city. But if for some chance you tend to get to a position where you are here, quote, they will kill you. Look, you know what, Greg? All this stuff about taking on Trump. Look, I don't agree with everything he says. You don't agree everything he says. No one that's listening to agrees with everything anybody says. But here's the bottom line. The globalists despise Trump.
And I love that. And that to me makes it all worthwhile.
And they despise him, Greg, because he's going after their Achilles heel.
Which is?
The human trafficking issue and the pedophile issue.
I think is that why, and you have contacts, and let's get into that. Is that why, the Sessions came out and said, we're not going to go after Lois Lerner, and I thought, bigger fish to fry. The first thing that popped in my head was bigger fish to fry. Is that why Sessions is so quiet about what's going on? He's been really quiet. And so is Trump. You haven't heard a word from him. You have not heard a word about Sessions and Trump. You haven't even seen them in pictures together. What's going on with that? Let me know.
So what I believe there is a concerted effort to take down the pedophile networks around our country and around the world. Look, we just had that G20 meeting, right? Remember a couple months ago?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Well, the mainstream fake media didn't report this, but thousands of arrests occurred right at the beginning of that G20 meeting. In fact, some of the participants in the G20 meeting were let out in handcuffs.
Woo.
Because of their involvement in human trafficking and pedophile issues.
Yes, they don't touch that. Even with good sourcing, they had 496 arrests, and I'm looking this up, and I'm thinking, wow, this is KTLA. They got video. They got a TV station.
Yeah.
And they ain't reported. 500 people in one sitting arrested? This was last year, I think, or earlier this year or last year. Anyway, go ahead.
And so many people are going to say, well, but we still haven't seen a big fish go down, right? I mean, we still haven't seen a perp.
Dennis Hastert went down.
Anthony Weiner
went down. They got him. They're working on him. They got to be working on him.
Yeah, and I truly believe. Oh, you don't.
Wait, hold on. So you think that the gears are turning to knock out these pedophiles, and that's just gonna knock them out. They're gonna be revealed.
Absolutely, I truly believe that. Now, is it on the time frame I would like? I would have liked to have this happen 8 months ago, 9 months ago. But a friend of mine who has come on my show many times, his name is Bob Mazur. They made the movie The Infiltrator about him. He was the undercover DEA agent who took down Pablo Escobar.
Whew.
And what Bob talks about is you let an investigation, you let a sting a program run its course longer than many feel comfortable. And the reason is because the longer you let that sting operation move, as long as your agents are not compromised, you're going to get bigger and bigger fish. And I believe that is exactly what's occurring. When I talk to Craig Sawyer about this, Craig Sawyer's finger is on the pulse. And he talks about thousands of these pedophiles, thousands of these human traffickers that have been taken down since Trump took office.
These people are Satanists. Let's just call it what it is. These aren't just pedophiles. These are pedophiles that think this is part of worshiping Moloch or Satan. I mean, these people, that's the whole thing that I was watching the Emmys. I'm thinking, this is a crowd of people that don't believe in Jesus Christ. They don't believe in God. They don't believe in Christianity. They believe in Satan. I mean, they're icons in their world, believe in Satan and worship Satan.
They are truly evil, Greg. Now,
and this is why they like abortion. It's innocent blood.
In that interview that I did with Craig Sawyer, that's on DaveJanda.com, he was SEAL Team operator, SEAL Team 6 operator, one of the toughest guys to ever be a SEAL. At the end of that interview, Greg, I had him in tears.
Oh,
and here's what brought him to tears. I said, Craig, people are going to say that we're overstating the issue. I go, let me just pose a couple questions. Do you believe that the children that are involved in these pedophile rings are being serially raped by these globalists? And his answer was yes. And then I said, has it been your experience? Do you have documentation that shows that it goes beyond rape? That these children, ultimately, many of whom are killed? And his answer was yes. And then I took another step, Greg. I said, Craig, in some of these children that are ultimately killed, are their organs then harvested and utilized on the black market for organ procurement? And this is what brought him to tears. His answer was yes.
Oh, that's evil.
It is, Greg, it is beyond evil. And the reason why I bring this up is because each and every one of our listeners has to know who our enemy truly is. If we don't identify who our enemy is and how evil they are, we will never be able to defeat them. And this is why I appreciate what you do and what I try to do. You see, what you do and what I do will never make the lamestream fake media. And it's because every avenue of the lamestream fake media is owned and operated by this globalist criminal syndicate that its heart is evil.
I have friends in the media that were telling me when I was telling the economy was going to blow up in 2008. They were, things are great. And I said, no, not great. Or subprime's not going to be contained. The stock market's going to blow up. And all the banks are in trouble. And every one of those statements was true. is true, and still today the banks are still in trouble. What about the financial? I mean, they haven't been able to knock Trump out. He's been Mr. Teflon, and I think there's a reason for that. According to Mark Taylor, who wrote the book, The Trump Prophecies, he says he's God's anointed. He certainly is profoundly mentioning God. His wife is, leading prayers with the Our Father, who art in heaven. The Lord's Prayer, and he hasn't been touched. I mean, are they going to try to crash the economy and blame it on him? Which I don't think will stick either. You don't get a White House. You don't walk into the White House with $20 trillion in debt and go, "Oh, all the problems are yours." I mean, are they going to crash the economy ultimately? I mean, my sources are feeling hinky. I got people that email me that I'm not at liberty to say who they are or what they are, and they're saying, "Man, one of them's going to a bug out bunker." And he's a former high-ranking, say, intelligence person. And they say things are hinky. What are your sources saying about crashing the economy, about things going bad in a hurry?
Exactly what you've heard. Greg, I think this is, and I wrote a recent blog post about a financial hurricane about to hit our shores and the world's shores. Here's the thing. There are several, when it comes to the globalists and their warped minds, they always tend to give us a little bit of a heads up before they flush the toilet while us serfs are still in the shower, right?
Yeah, they have to do that supposedly. It's part of their gig, their scam,
right.
Let you know.
And there are four things that have happened recently that my sources have locked onto that said, look, they're giving you a heads up, and it's coming. Number one, on Fox Business News, Cavuto was interviewing Terry Duffy, who's the CEO of the Chicago Mercantile Exchange, where a lot of these fraudulent transactions are occurring when paper contracts when it comes to the precious metals markets, suppressing gold and silver, because by suppressing gold and silver, they keep their food supply, the reserve currency of the dollar propped up. Terry Duffy said, and as you know, when this just didn't come up casually. This was planned. Okay, I mean you're a media guru. I've been on a bunch of network media shows in the past, but Cavuto looks at him and goes, there's all these world events. There's North Korea, there's Syria, there's Ukraine, there's China, all this stuff going on, and well, gold and silver they're just kind of going up a little bit, but not as much as they should be. And Duffy looks at him and goes, you're right. Someday people are going to wake up and gold's going to be 3,000 an ounce, 5,000 an ounce, heck, even 6,000 an ounce. Okay, number one. Number two. Okay, several weeks ago on the front page of the Wall Street Journal.
Wait, stop. I'm going to just jump in here. So you're saying he is giving you a heads up. We're going to uncork gold and silver. We're going to stop suppressing it, or we're going to not be able to suppress it, whatever. But you're saying the prices are going to go Bitcoinish. I mean, Ray Dalio just came out, the biggest hedge fund holders, just to back you up. Ray Dalio just came out and said Bitcoin's in a bubble and gold is money. Whew, this is a guy running a $160 billion fund. I'd be hard-pressed to bet against him. Anyway, go ahead.
Right now, it's hard to bet against Bitcoin. I'm not a Bitcoin fanatic. In fact, I believe Bitcoin trades more obviously a free market than gold and silver have, precious metals have in decades.
A lot of people would agree with you.
Right? And so, but here's my concern, is that if they take the system down, who's to say that my electronic wealth will remain? A good example, MF Global, right?
Oh, yeah.
A lot of people had on their, when they get on the internet and they go to their website with MF Global, oh yeah, my balance is good. Or how about the Madoff people, right? They get on the internet, they look on their statement, oh yeah, everything's good. And next thing you know, until it's not. And I'm very old-fashioned in this respect, but I believe unless you're holding it, you don't own it.
Yeah, and so number one, I interrupted you. I want to get you back on track. They gave a big tell on price of gold and silver going up. They gave a big tell on that. Okay. And number two, you said four things.
That implies gold, silver up, but that also implies market down.
Okay.
Okay. And then
what? Number two.
And we had the Wall Street Journal with a front page article, no less, with a question mark. is there really 6,200 tons of gold in the vaults under the streets of New York City at the New York Fed?
Wow.
Whoa.
According to Steve Mnuchin, all the gold, the Treasury Secretary, he's seen the gold and it's fine, or whatever his treat was.
That's number 3. And then the next week, Steve Mnuchin, an alumnus of Goldman Sachs, right, the great vampire squid that sucks the blood and money out of anything and everything around, Steve Mnuchin goes to Fort Knox, and before he goes in, Greg, he says, wow, it would really make to be quite a movie if we got in there and there was no gold.
I didn't know that.
Oh, he said that before he went in. And then he went in. Now, reportedly, he looked at one of the 13 vaults. They didn't assay. They didn't check bar numbers to see if they were bars that were owned by other governments or the like. There was no assaying done. There was nothing. He walks out, and what does he say? What does he tweet? Quote, gold is safe. Yeah, well, so is silver. Okay? That doesn't mean that, but gold is safe. Yeah, I agree. I agree with you. Gold is safe. No, so that's number 3. And then number 4, this past week, that same Goldman Sachs, of which Mnuchin is an alumnus, Goldman Sachs puts out a position statement for its clients saying that, in times of world events, it's best to own not paper contracts in gold or precious metals, but owning physical.
Reputation protection. We told you.
Right?
We told you. Jim Rickards takes the whole system, and I know he's been hired by the Pentagon to do war games and whatever. He's an insider, but he does come up with some truth, and he thinks the whole. And I think this is going to happen because you know the truth when you hear it. And he says, they're going to shut the system down. It's going to freeze. It's going to be ice 9. They're going to freeze it. They're going to freeze the system.
Well, and
I think he's right.
I think he's right as well. And everybody that I know that is knowledgeable in finance and folks that are very, very connected worldwide all say the same thing.
And so my next question to you, and this is the Riviera question, because if you get this right, you can retire and spend the rest of your life on the French Riviera. The Riviera question is when? I mean, I'm thinking if we make it through October, we'll be okay for the rest of the year. But I don't know if we're going to make it through October. I mean, Trump, Haley, the head of the UN, and Trump are all saying we're going to protect ourselves and we're going to annihilate North Korea. I mean, that sounds to me, he's in front of the UN this week saying we're going to blow up Rocket Man. We're going to destroy him. Nikki Haley, the same thing. I mean, we're going to protect ourselves, and we don't want this, but we're going to destroy North Korea. Whoa.
So here's the deal on that, Greg. Whenever I hear in public something like that discussed, I don't buy it. My experience in Washington was that when something is that public, something else is going on. So would it surprise me that China, who has been a big supporter of North Korea, right? They're kind of like they use China as like they use North Korea as kind of like their crazy uncle in the closet, right? Whenever they kind of want to do something, they kind of drag them out and shake them around, and everybody capitulates, and then fine. But I think China at this point, and here's where I think Trump has worked behind the curtain. I think China and Trump have come to an arrangement. And it would not surprise me if Kim is taken out, but not taken out by a Trump missile, but by China.
They've had enough.
Yeah.
That would set a lot of things down, wouldn't it? Yes, it would. Dave Janda, I got to cut it off. I want to direct everybody to it's your overall theme is Operation Freedom, but it's DaveJanda.com with the interview with your SEAL Team 6 guy, which is Fantastic. I will link to that and also to your homepage so people get to it. It's a free site, right? I mean, all the information on it is free. Is that correct?
It's all free, and my radio show is every Sunday from 2 to 5 Eastern. It can be streamed live on davejanda.com, but I always put the podcasts up usually by 9 p.m. Sunday, and everything is free. In fact, the show's been ongoing since October 2010. All the podcasts for the past 7 years are available free.
I'm free. No subscription. I don't have any subscription either. I don't, I mean, I have Google ads, which are, what's going on with that. And I don't want to go on and on about wah. But anyway, Dave Janda, Operation Freedom, davejanda.com. Thank you for enlightening us and giving us your thoughts and on everything from healthcare to your inside sources. Fascinating stories, my friend. We're up against some real evil. I mean, some real dang evil.
But here's the good news, Greg.
Yep.
We're going to win.
Yes, fear not.
Because you know what? Evil never wins in the long run. And
yes.
And I'm not just saying this. It's because of a lot of what you're doing. See, because the more we educate people, the more we shed the light of truth on what's really going on, the sooner we defeat these scum. And I really appreciate it. I appreciate you coming on my show. You're going to be on my show October 15th, and I'm really looking forward to that.
Yes, I will.
And I would
yes,
like to
I'm looking at my calendar.
I would like to thank you for allowing me to finally, in my nurse's eyes, Kathy Heller, finally making it to the big time.
Oh, no. The honor is mine. I found myself sitting there. I take notes during the interviews, and all of a sudden I find myself, because I'm, looking for little, nuggets of stuff, and I just find myself, I forgot to write that down. So anyway, you were great. This is going to be a good one. You were great. I thank Rob Kirby. He suggested you to come on. You were great. Listen, Dave Janda, davejanda.com, your overall theme, Operation Freedom. It's a lot about a lot of stuff. And thank you so much for coming on USAWatchdog.com.
I thank you, Greg, for everything you do.